gonna record. Okay. Can you see the screen?
Yeah,
Okay, go ahead. Like, do you think that you can communicate the way that you communicate with your friends at work right now?
no,
Why?
because there's like the way you talk around your friends is way different to compared how like you talk professionally.
Mhm. So would you say it is more informal
Yeah,
and it can be a little more rude and honest?
yeah,
Yes. And that is great that you have noticed because that's why, there is effective communication in the workplace because code switching is real, right? So that
yeah,
means adapting your communication style based on the setting, the environment, the people that you're with. So the reality is that you don't talk the same way to your friends, to your parents, right?
yeah,
You don't because there's a different specific certain level of respect to that person, a different communication style as well. Give me a second, Esmeralda. Wait, let me put a mute my. Bye, take care. But as I was saying before, there's a different level of respect, the setting, and you also got to keep in mind of how you want to present yourself, right? Remember how we talked last week in regards to personal branding, right? Like the first impression that you make is irreversible, meaning that you can
yeah.
make one good first impression. So imagine if you go to a job interview and you talk and you say, "Yo, what's up? I'm sorry.
Mhm.
I don't think you're gonna get hired." Obviously, depending of the position. If it's you working at Chipotle, okay, But if it's you working at a law firm, definitely not. Correct?
Yeah,
So here are some of the learning objectives that we will be discussing in today's workshop. So the first one is understanding communication. So this is something that we already did, but just put a huge emphasis on distinguishing the day-to-day communication to effective communication in the workplace, right? And the second learning objective that we have is learning about professional networking. So we have to distinguish about, in-person and online interactions. And this is something that we're going to go in further detail in the next slide. And the third one is understanding the importance of active listening when it comes to conversations, specifically in the professional environment, because it is key. Um, So now, buenas. So what is communication? So communication is a process of exchanging information, ideas, thoughts, and the feelings about individuals and groups. And that can be in different, communication channels, right? And it is important to know that communication always involves a sender who conveys the message and a receiver who interprets what the message means, right? So the same way that we're doing it right now, I am the sender. I'm sending you a message, and this is verbal communication, right? And
yeah,
now you are the one that's receiving that message. And now, based on your experience or your perspective, then now you are dissecting, interpreting what I'm telling you, right?
yeah,
The same way how you're in class and you're listening to your professor. She's telling you some information which might be useful or might not be useful to you. And now it is on your, um, yourself to determine what does that mean. And I have to say, yes, please. And I have to say that this also depends based on the method of communication. For example, let's say I am your friend and I send you a text message, but then the way that you read the text message sounds like is if it's like an attitude, right? But even though it's not a voice message, you just reading the text message. So based on the situation that's happening, you can interpret what the message is about or how does it sound, right?
yeah,
And that can be a little confusing at times, right? Because I'm gonna be 100% honest, I have had issues with, my boyfriend at the time where he said something and he put a dot at the end. And I'm like, what? Like, are you ending the conversation? Like, what is happening? And I
Yeah.
told him, and I'm like, why you texting me with an attitude? And then he says, Valorant, I don't have an attitude. And I'm like, you do, because I can sense it, right? But this is an example of how some messaging can be interpreted in a negative and completely the opposite way. Because I'm
Yeah.
gonna be 100% honest. I have sent text messages, and I think, they're so easy to understand. They're so like, this is so simple. This is so basic. Like, there's no way that you are gonna get it in the other way, but they still do, right? And then I gotta get on the phone call. No, that is not what I meant. I am sorry. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
the wording that you use is extremely important. Also the tone. But we can talk about that in more detail later on. But I want to ask you, have you had any example where, information that was provided to you was completely misunderstood, or you read it in a completely different way?
Yeah.
Can you give any example?
Um, there was one time where my brother he texted me something when I was at school,
Mhm.
and he was telling me to like keep my dog like in his cage when I wasn't home.
Yes.
It somehow it kind of like seemed he was like the tone kind of seemed off
Yeah.
in
Hmm.
the text message.
Hmm. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. It happens, and they can create either little misunderstandings or huge misunderstandings that can lead potentially to arguments and just having more drama and unnecessary things, right? So for
Yeah.
this one, it's also important that when we communicate in in a professional workplace, that we communicate in a way that it is professional, where we're not going to be causing any misunderstandings, right? Because we don't want to have any chaos or arguments or discussions in the workplace, right? You want to
No.
make sure that either your coworker, your employee, or your supervisor gets the information that you're sending them to them. Not be like confused. What is this? What is not this? What are you trying to say? Like, why are you offending the other person? No. So intention is very important as well. So now let's talk about the different types of communication. As mentioned before, the verbal communication, which is exactly what we're doing, but I put in parentheses the tone of voice. I believe that I said it last week, and it is what you say and it is how you say it, right?
Yeah.
I want to show you a video. It is, do you know Ice Cube, right?
Yeah.
I want to show you this video. It is Ice Cube, and he is saying nice phrases, but in an aggressive tone. So even though if it's nice, it comes off as like you are being violent, you are being aggressive, you are being so rude. So let's say he's saying the phrase, I love your mother. But he's saying it in the body language is showing such a sense of like disrespect that is completely different. So I'm gonna show you that so that we can, talk about it a little more. Let's see. Ice Cube. Let's see, Mad Face. And what show was Jimmy Fallon? I think it was Jimmy Fallon or the other one. Let's see, this one. Okay, look at it, and then you tell me what you think. I'm gonna let me know if you can
You
hear.
are very good at
Can you hear that or no?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
seeming angry. I don't know if you are angry in general, but in the movies, in 21 and 20 Jump Street, you're disgusted with. I mean, Jonah Hill and Channing Tatum, wouldn't they piss you off? So I thought it would be fun if I give you some lines. Now, these are not lines that you would not classify these lines as your typical, like, kind of angry guy lines. In fact, they're quite the opposite of that. Okay. And I'll read them to you, and if you act them back to me in your own inimitable way, okay? Okay. You want to do that?
By the way, I love Ice Cube.
All right, say these as angrily as you can. Lavender body wash makes my pores tingle. Lavender body wash make my pores tingle. There's nothing better on a gloomy day than a good book, a warm blanket, and a creamy pumpkin bisque. Man, it's nothing better on a gloomy day than a warm, what was a good blanket, a warm, man, give me some damn pumpkin brisk. All right. You know, I went to the LA Unified School District, so I can't read that good. You know what? You did it well. Oh, you did it well. All right, all right. Here's another one for you. I want a love like the love in the Notebook, a love that splits the sky. Love like the love in the Notebook, the one that splits the sky, man. This is wonderful, and this is great for young actors as well. It's an exercise. All right, one more. You ready? Let's do it. OMG, did you do something new with your hair? I love it. OMG, did you do something with your hair? Love it. It's high school, everybody. That's it.
Do you see that? What do you think? What are your thoughts?
Mm. Well, it seems like he's doing it like an angry voice, but at the same time, it's pretty funny on how he's doing it.
But there you can see that there is a connection between, the interpretation of the message based on the tone of voice. Because I'm going to be 100% honest. Imagine that somebody's talking to you, maybe not about something funny, but something about work, and it's not negative, but they're talking to them in such an aggressive tone that can lead to a lot of misunderstandings, right?
Yeah.
So it is also important to know that, depending on what you say and who you say it with, depending on the relationship, depending on the place, you cannot talk to that person however you want to talk to that person. So I'm going to give you an example. Let's say you and I, let's say you're my coworker, we have been friends for years, and we have a personal argument. We are mad about something, and we go to work and we made a whole scene at work and we yelled things at each other. What do you think is gonna happen? What do you think is gonna happen?
Probably get in trouble,
Get
and
in
it could
trouble.
lead
Get
to
in
a
trouble.
bad consequence to where you could get fired.
Fire, depending on the situation, depending who we do it in front, right?
Yeah.
And another thing, right? If I am your supervisor and we don't have any personal relationship whatsoever, and then you go and then you yell at me, is that professional behavior?
No.
Even though you might be frustrated about something, is that professional behavior?
No.
No, because there's a way on how to say it. So I'm gonna give an example. Let's say I am your employee and you're my supervisor, and I'm extremely frustrated because I have been getting misinformation. So then my work is not being like it's not having good results because I never know what to do. So I'm always confused and you don't provide me information, and I am coming to you to talk about the needs that I have as an employee for me to be successful. Right? So this is the way that I can say it. I'm gonna do it twice. Um and then you tell me which one is the way that you think that should have been said. Hi Esmeralda, how are you? Good. Okay. So I want to talk to you because I have a few concerns in regards to some of the communication that is being given to me, because I have to be 100% honest. I'm extremely frustrated because some of the information that has been given is extremely confusing, and at times I receive multiple communication from different people, and that can cause a lot of communication with me and my team, and also doesn't help me when it comes to producing quality work, because it delays projects and it's just confusing. Or I can say, Esmeralda, I think that you are the, I don't want to say any bad words, right? I don't think that you're fit to be a supervisor. I think you're horrible. You have horrible communication skills. You don't know what you're doing. I have messed up my work multiple times because of you. What do you think? Which one is the one?
The first one.
Right. And the first one, you can see that I was able to be assertive, concise, meeting to the point, and I didn't yell or I didn't critique in a negative way my supervisor. But I was saying, like I feel like communication could have been improved. This is causing some issues for me and my team, right? That is a professional language. So making sure that you know that that is the difference between the two. And then we have the nonverbal communication, and that is when we don't speak in methods of communication, and that can be written communication and visual communication, right? Right. If you see this, let's see. If you see this, what do you think? If you see this in my hands, what do you think?
Mm,
And it's almost empty. What can be your assumptions based on this? Maybe that I like this brand. Maybe that my lips might be dry and I need to use them, right?
yeah.
So the same way how we see some visual communication that also translates a lot of things. The same way that if somebody sends you a sad emoji, what do you think of that person? That is a method of communication.
You're sad.
They're sad, right? They send you an emoji. Well, now that you can customize emojis, they send you an emoji eating some food. What are you gonna think? Oh, that person's really hungry, or they're actually eating some food right now, right? So that's
Yeah.
also a method of communication. And I feel that body language also goes when it comes to visual communication, because the reality is that you can say nice things, but if your face is looking like this when you're talking to telling them stories, that says a lot as well, right? So,
Yeah.
as mentioned last week, your body tells and sends a message, right? So let's say if you are, this actually happened a lot. That's why the kids tell me that I'm horrible. But if I am teaching a class, you're teaching me a class, and I am like this, what do you think? You think that they're giving you the message they're not interested, they don't like the class, they're super disrespectful, they don't have a good posture, a lot of things, right? Or if I am, let's see, I am like this. What's the message that's sending you?
Um, Annoyed, tired.
Tired, annoyed, maybe I haven't slept, maybe I'm a little sad, right? Or what if I'm like this?
Not interested at all.
Not interested or sad or something, I'm going through something's happening, right? But what if you're talking and I am like this and I am not talking, I'm not saying anything.
Mm, you're being attentive.
Being attentive, I'm engaged, I have some follow-up questions, I am interested, I seem professional, right?
Yeah.
So keeping in mind, everything always translates a message, right? Maybe the same way how you are in the classroom and I come up and I say, hi, what does that show? Okay, maybe this is like a social butterfly or something. Because you see a lot of people that are always like, or to your face or on your face, or there are always people that are like to be isolated. They don't like talking to people. Often when it comes to like large groups, you don't see them talking or they just, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that sends you a message as well. That might mean that if you work with a group and this person is always like that, maybe you need to talk a little more to that person so that they can be more attentive, right? So
Yeah.
things like that. And it is important to understand that there is a difference when it comes to communication or communicating on one-on-one and communicating with a group. What do you think is the difference? Do you think it's easier to communicate with one person than communicating with 8 or 10 people at the same time?
Yeah.
Why?
Because you don't have to repeat yourself over and over.
Mhm.
Um, it's like more straightforward with it.
Mhm. What else?
Mm,
Mhm. Okay. So it is important to know that when you're communicating to a large group, that means that you are dealing with multiple personalities, you are dealing with multiple needs, you might be dealing with potential concerns that they might have, you might be dealing with specific communication styles, right?
Yeah.
Because the reality is, some people they don't like you sending text messages. They rather you have send them a phone call. Or there's some people that they rather you, send me an email than send me a text message. Or they have some people that they rather have FaceTime or Zoom meetings than actual phone call. Or some people that like to meet in person and not virtually, right? So
Yeah.
imagine that. Imagine that you have to do a group project in school and all of them they have different communication styles or they have different things. It can be extremely difficult, right? So that is why each organization, and this is specifically related to the workplace, each organization usually has a formal method of communication. And that method of communication is reinforced within the organization to make sure that there is a uniform communication or messaging channel or something like that. For example, what do you think is a method of communication that most organization uses? Do you know?
No.
Mhm. So the method of organization, well, the method of communication that most organization uses it depends on the amount of employees, but it is usually always emails. Like any formal requests, any, important update, those are sent through emails. But as mentioned earlier, it depends on the number of employees in that team, right? Because sometimes some agencies or some organizations, they rather have in-person staff meetings, or it is combined with both emails and in-person staff meetings, right? But let's
Yeah.
say if I have an organization of 100 employees, I might not want meeting with 100 employees in a room. I might want to send an email to all of those 100 employees, right?
Yeah.
So it depends on what is the most convenient and what is the most appropriate and effective at the time. And it also depends on the information that you're going to be providing, right? So let's say if it's sensitive information about an employee, you shouldn't be sending it to everybody else. So I'm going to give an example. Let's say, Esmeralda, that unfortunately you are getting fired, right? I, as a supervisor, I should be having that in person or sending it to you through email. I shouldn't say an email to the 100 staff members saying, Esmeralda, you're fired, right? That's huge,
Yeah.
huge, huge. It makes a huge impact. So keeping that in mind, that it depends on the setting, people, the number of employees, the preferred method of communication, and so many things like that, right? And that also goes when it comes to text messaging. Some supervisors, they don't like you sending text messages. And not like at 5 in the morning, 3 in the morning, 2 in the morning. That is seem unprofessional. Usually the time that is considered as professional when it comes to reaching out and also depends on the reason is from 9 to 5, right, in the work hours. And I say depending on the reason because if you're sending me something that you can send me, through text or that I can wait for the next day, then I'd rather you do that. But if, let's say, one of my students died, which has never happened, one of my students died, I don't want to wait until the next day for me to know that one of my students died. I need you to call me right when it happened.
Yeah.
So it depends on the information as well, because there are some time sensitive information. Um, and then do you know what mass communication is?
No.
So mass communication is when you're communicating to the masses, right? So that is large groups of people. Most likely that is like so let's say I work at Nike. Communication to the masses are communicating to the audience. So the potential buyers and the people that are, customers of my brand, right?
Yeah.
Haven't you noticed how you sometimes receive emails about, 50% off or 10% off, or this is available, this is not available, things like that?
Yeah.
So that is communication to the masses, right? Most likely you are not the only person that's getting the 50% off, but it's you and 500 other people, right? So when you're communicating like that, it is important to have concise, meeting to the point information and brief information. right? And that is extremely important because if there's something that you can send in 3 sentences, don't send them in 3 pages. Right. So that is what I mean by effective communication. We just don't want you to communicate professionally. We want you to communicate professionally in an effective way in the meeting that you're not wasting time, you are not adding more to the workload that we have, right?
Yeah.
Mhm. So now let's talk about some barriers to effective communication. And the first one is language barriers, right? In the sense that if I speak French and you only speak English, even though I am communicating in a very professional way and you are communicating in a very professional way, we will not understand each other, right? So ensuring
Yeah.
speaking the same language. Another thing, which is a huge factor, is a psychological barrier and aspect of it. And why do I say this? Because the way that you communicate with somebody your own age is not the same way that you're going to communicate with a 5-year-old, right? Like I cannot communicate in a professional, formal way with a 5-year-old, right? Because they don't have those motor skills. They don't have those um they don't have the ability to analyze information, or they don't have ability to analyze complex information, right? To them, it's like, you hungry? Yeah, no, okay. Your stomach hurts? Yeah, I'm dying. You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
basic information. The same way that, let's say there's somebody that's 50 years old, but they have a learning disability and they have the intelligence of a 6-year-old. Unfortunately, even though they're 57 or 56 or whatever age I mentioned, they don't have the mental capacity to understand, right? And I have to say, there are people that are the same age and they have the same intellectual, capacity, but some of them they don't have the emotional capacity to handle it, right? So let's say if I am going through something, God forbid somebody that I love dies or something happened to me, and you're telling me something about work or you're telling me some information, I don't have the emotional capacity to listen to anything that you're saying to me, right?
Yeah.
So it's ensuring that it's now also, the intellectual level, but it's also the emotional health of that person as well, right? Because let's say if you're crying right now because something's happening to you, and I'm like, you're fine, you're gonna be fine. That information is not processing to you, right? Something else that is very important is the culture difference, right? And this is because we live in a culture and in a country that it is, a part of many different countries and things like that. So here you see people from Asia, you see people from, the South America, you see people from Europe, you see people from Africa and all of those things. So they all have different cultures. So sometimes it can be a little interesting. It can be a little frustrating, and it can lead to a lot of misunderstandings as well. So I'm gonna provide an example. In my culture, I'm Dominican, so I'm South African, Caribbean, however you want to call it. Not South African, oh my God, from South America. That is crazy. Uh, in my culture, it is very normalized to use eye contact. That is key. You see somebody in the street, you're doing eye contact always. But that also is a sign of respect. That is a sign of engagement as well, that you're listening to a person. But in Asia, specifically Japan, making eye contact might be seen as rude, disrespectful, like you are, you know, there's some tension, like something's happening, right? So that's why you see people looking down. But so imagine an interaction with somebody from Japan and somebody from the DR that they don't know anything about their culture, and that I'm looking at you and that you're looking down. What do you think? That can lead to a misunderstanding because I can think, what is wrong with this person? They're just looking down at their feet. They're so disrespectful. They're so insecure that they cannot look up to me. And the other person that's looking down, they're like, why is this person just looking at me like that? Right?
Yeah.
So that is different. So also making sure that you are culturally aware, meaning that you are conscious of the behavior of different cultures, because that's extremely important. Because there's some cultures or some people from different countries that they can be extremely direct, and there are others that find that to be very offensive or disrespectful, right?
Yeah.
Those are things to keep in mind. Um, Look, this one that somebody said in Asia, when somebody's gifted a gift, they don't open it in front of, the people that give it to them because they feel like that is, insensitive to open a gift. But then in the Western culture, when somebody gives them a gift, it is custom to open the gift in front of the people and make, happy faces with the gift, right? Like, oh,
Yeah.
thank you so much. But in Asia, it's like you seem as greedy when you open it in front of the people. It's like, wow, you couldn't wait enough and then you just decided to open it, right? So things to keep in mind, right? And then also the organizational barriers, as mentioned, different organizations have different, work environments, work cultures, and things like that. But this is something that is very real. It is a technological barrier. What does this mean? That there are some people that have, a specific technological capacity and than others. Meaning, and this is a real life story. My grandfather, that is, I think, 75 now, doesn't have a phone, doesn't know how to use a phone, is not interested in using a phone. So whenever he goes out, I need to know who he goes out with so that I can call that person and then call and then reach out to him. So let's say he works at this place. He doesn't have a phone. So I need to call his supervisor for him to give him my grandpa the phone so we can talk.
Oh.
Right? And this has happened where he has gone to places and we think that he's missing because he doesn't have a phone. And then 5 hours later, he just shows up at the house with some crazy story. This happened to me. And then we're like, that's exactly what you need a phone, right? So
Yeah.
that goes to show that there's some people that they don't have the best technological skills. Let's say, but nowadays it happens. Kids, they know how to use an iPad and a computer better than me, I think. But let's say a 1 month old, I don't think he's gonna be able to type in a phone. I don't think he's gonna be able to talk through the phone, right?
Yeah.
Thinking of those things as well, the technological barrier, because that is a reality when you're communicating with some clients that they don't know how to use a phone or they don't know how to join a Zoom meeting, right? That is something that is real and that is very common nowadays, unfortunately, but it is completely understandable. And then we have the information overload, which is something that I mentioned briefly earlier. And the reality is that we live in an era of technology, an era of information overload, meaning that we're always receiving multiple sources of information or just a lot of information, right? Let's say, for example, since we just finished like the political campaign and the presidential campaign and things like that, right? I was receiving like news outlets, so many articles through email. I was seeing it on TikTok. I was seeing it everywhere, right? That is a lot of information overload. But when it comes to effective communication, as mentioned, is that it has to be concise and effective, meaning that the message is being understood or is being presented on a way that is easily able to, follow or understand, right? So, for example, if I sent you a 10-page essay, do you think you're gonna read it? Versus if I sent you 3 paragraphs, which one is easier for you to get to the point?
3 paragraphs.
The 3 paragraph, right? Because it's shorter and it's not as many details, but you're still getting in those 3 paragraphs enough that you can understand what is happening, right? Instead of you reading 10 pages, which I think that is wrong, by the way. I remember when I was in high school and they made me write like 5 pages, and I felt like during those 5 pages, I was saying the exact same thing in different ways.
Yeah.
I was like, at this point, we need to make something. Like, I wish that I could have provided everything, in a page. Like in college, you have to do 10, 15, 20-page essays, and it's like, why? What is this? But I get it. And most likely, I don't think the professor reads the 20 pages. I think that's crazy. But You get it, right? We're in a place where a lot of information is being provided to us. So the reality is that we have a very short attention span. The same way that when you're in class and the class is 3 hours, you might listen to the first hour, an hour and 45 minutes. And after that, you're like, this is too much for me, right?
Yeah.
And that is real, right? Any questions in regards to the barriers?
No.
Okay. Now let's talk about how can we overcome those barriers? Because the reality is, I need to stop saying reality. The facts are that these are things that can happen to you at any point of your life, not only when it comes to your professional career, but also in your personal life. Because you're meeting somebody at a grocery store that is from Brazil and they have a different language, or that they're from, I don't know, wherever, and they have a different culture, or you have a grandfather or somebody in your family that doesn't know how to use the phone, right? That is something very realistic. So how can we overcome those things? The first one is a lot of training and a lot of professional development. You are not going to be able to learn how to talk like me in 1 hour session of professional career, right? Because that takes a lot of practice, a lot of information, correct? So that is something that takes time, and it's important to seek for those trainings and resources. But the great thing is that right now, at your short age of life, you are already at taking those trainings, right? So this puts you ahead when it comes to going to a job interview or applying for internships or different work opportunities, because you're gonna have the, maybe not the experience, but the education and the training needed for you to be able to adapt to those settings. Because the reality is that, for the first job experience, it can be extremely difficult because you don't know what to expect, you don't know what to talk to, you don't know how I can communicate. Depends on the place, it's like, who are my clients? How am I supposed to, provide customer service skills? So it can be extremely difficult, but with time, you get to that point. And also cultural sensitivity, as mentioned, you need to be cultural aware, specifically, in this country that we live in. And active communication, it is key. You need to be able not to just hear what somebody's saying, but listen, right? And I say this because there are times that I just hear noises, but nothing is going through, right? And then at the end, I'm like, what happened? Right? And that can be the same way that you might be, with me, or even in class when you are, listening to your teacher and then nothing is getting through. You just like hear them talk, right? So you're hearing the noises and the sounds that are making, but you're not listening and processing the information that you're being provided with, right? So that's why active listening is so important, and specifically in a work environment, right? Because let's say if you are a supervisor and one of your employees is coming to you because they have a huge concern. Let's say that, God forbid, they're having sexually assaulted, and they're talking to you because they're having sexually assaulted. And you're thinking of other things and you're working on the computer while they're talking, so you don't even listen, you don't even know. And you're like, okay, well, thank you, have a good night. And the person just leaves crying, and then you are like, why is this person crying? Like, you don't even know what happened, right? Or you don't
Yeah.
want to go, or you don't want to go to a meeting, and then somebody's asking you, okay, Esmeralda, what do you think of this? And you are like, what was it about? Like, you don't want to do that, right?
Mm.
So you want to make sure that you're engaged, you're paying attention, you know the content, right? Because the reality is that sometimes at work they're gonna ask you to do something, and most likely they already provided the information to you. So it's just a matter of you getting that information. So making sure that that you have a good reputation as somebody that is organized and that provides quality work, or that is a great professional, right? And also the effective use of technology, it's key, crucial. Do you have any questions about this?
No.
Okay, let's keep going. Now, okay. We already talked about the first two, so I'm just gonna say the last bullet point. So this one is about professional work etiquette. As mentioned earlier, be clear, concise with the emails. They need to be straightforward, but avoid any jargon. I think that's how you say it, or any unnecessary information meeting. If I'm talking to you and I ask you a question, let's say, Valorant, what are your numbers for this program? And I say, yeah, the numbers are this, but you won't guess what happened to me today. I had a horrible day, but it's like it's not needed. It's not the time or place for you to tell me that you had a horrible day. I just need to know the numbers,
Yeah.
right? So we don't want to have any unnecessary information. Or let's say if I ask you to, oh, give me the contact of this person, and then you go and then you send me their work experience for 50 years when I didn't need that work experience. You know what I mean? So it's things that, things to the point, easy to understand, straightforward, and avoid anything that is not needed. Avoid additional details. Um, mhm. And the other one is active listening in meetings, making sure that you're paying full attention. And the last one, which is very important when it comes to your improvement in the work setting that you are going to be working in, is asking for constructive feedback. So that's asking and taking feedback in a positive and respectful manner. So the ways that I think this is a great way to, improve and educate a great or make a good impression or build a good reputation, because it is so different when I have a student or I have asked, because I have asked. Let's say, Esmeralda, you're my supervisor, and I am just new to the job. I have been here for a month. And then I ask, first I say, an intro. So, hi, Esmeralda, how are you? Or I hope you're doing well. I wanted to reach out because I wanted to request some feedback in regards to my performance this past month, because I really like to know how I am doing and how can I prove to better align with the goals of this organization, right? That's
Yeah.
something else. So that also it is good to do. Wait, give me a second. I gotta put my computer to charge. Well, I went to a gym at 5 in the morning, so I'm already like falling asleep. Okay, great. I don't think I have the scenario game. Let's see. No, I had in a scenario game, but I don't have it. Or I'll get it. Give me a second. And then I want you to tell me the possible solutions for this. Okay. Give me a second. Let's see. Okay. This is it. Okay. Okay. You are in a virtual meeting where a coworker explains an assignment, but their microphone cuts out at the key points. You do not fully understand the instructions that this person is giving you. What do you do? A, nod along and figure out later. B, message a teammate privately to ask what they said. C, ask them to repeat the missing part in the chat or via email. D, assume all the details weren't critical and proceed as planned. Was that a lot of information? Hello?
Um,
Okay, I'm gonna give you another one.
Okay.
This is only three options, right? So for this one, your supervisor gives you vague feedback on a project and says it's okay, but needs work. So what do you do? A, redo the whole project, assuming that something is wrong, even though you don't know what is wrong. B, ask a specific questions like, can you clarify what needs improvement? C, make random changes and you send it back to him.
B.
B, so you ask the questions, can you, what exactly is wrong? Because imagine if I give you an assignment and I say, it's okay, but it needs work. That creates a lot of confusion, like, okay, so what needs work? And that is when effective communication takes place in, right? Because as your supervisor, they should tell you, hey, Esmeralda, I think it's good. It has potential, but if you can please fix question 3, 4, and 5, just because they need a little more detail when it comes to the explanation. That is good, right? And that is concise.
Yeah.
I didn't take 3 hours to let you know what is wrong. You said you need more detail. And I told you what are the questions that you need to fix. So things like that. Let me ask you the last one. Um, okay. Your manager asked you to complete an assignment last week, but you never received any details. Now they're asking why it's not done, right? So what
Mhm.
do you do? A, apologize and promise to finish it immediately without mentioning the missing details. B, explain that you never received anything and ask them for them now. C, blame them for not providing enough guidance.
B.
B, exactly. You have to explain that they didn't ask you, that they didn't provide you with any information, right?
Yeah.
And you shouldn't be blaming them, like being like, it's your fault, you didn't do anything, you didn't send it to me. No, you can say, hey, Mrs. Esmeralda, unfortunately, I didn't receive any file, or any information from you, so I was not aware that we had a deadline. And then they can say, oh, let me check my email. And then when they check their email, they'll notice, oh, I never give them anything, right?
Yeah.
So it's important, the communication as well, because you need to make sure that you are being professional while addressing the issues without placing any blame. Okay, that's pretty much it. Let's go to the next. For this one, let's go over some of the communication mistakes. We have mentioned a few already, and that is lack of clarity in the message, not active listening, using inappropriate tone or language, and ignoring any nonverbal cue and not asking for any clarification, right? That is extremely important to know. Now let's talk about the email etiquette. First, before starting, I would like to ask you, have you ever wrote a professional email?
No.
Okay. So this is the way that it has to be, right? So there is email etiquette. You cannot email somebody the same way that you text message your friend, right? And this is important to know. Because we don't do any bad spelling, any like new word vibes, bro, vibes. Like you're not gonna do that in an email, right?
No.
You can say, hope you have a great day. Not say great vibes, dude. You know,
Mm.
no. Um, so you have to ensure that once again it is clear, it is respectful, it is professional, it maintains a positive image, not only as you as an individual and as a professional, but also a positive image of the organization, and also prevents any misunderstanding. I believe that I said to you last week when it comes to, hiring an employee that misspells every single email. What are they gonna think? Like, wow, Google hires people that don't know how to spell or things like that. So keeping things in mind, the first thing that you should know is that there always is a subject line, and a subject line is usually a line in under 8 words that provides a summary of what the email is going to be about, right? So let's say for this one specific, it says assignment due date confusion. So you already know that this email is about the assignment date that has created confusion because most likely this person provided additional information, right?
Yeah.
And then you always have the introduction, which is a direct opening, right? So let's say, oh no, you first have the greeting, and then you then have the introduction, right? So that is, hello, Professor Morgan, right? You are greeting, addressing this person. And then we have the direct opening line, which explains the reason of this email, right? And then they said, could you please clarify why I failed the previous assignment, right? And then we have the body paragraph, very similar to your essays in those classes. And that is where you explain in further detail, what happened.
Yeah.
Here it says, I believe that I followed the instructions, but may have been confused about the due date while dealing with some personal issues. If so, I apologize for my late submission and understand that is the reason for the fail. I just wanted to confirm if that was the reason and whether there is anything that I can do to make up for that mark, right? So we have, the subject, what is it about? We have the greeting, hello. We have the direct line, follow up with what the email is about. And we have the body paragraph where we describe everything. And then we always have a closing statement, and this is something that we usually do unconsciously. So this is when you ask for a request or you ask for a question at the end. So for this one, the closing statement says, I assure you that it won't happen again, and I'll pay attention for the next deadline for, from now on, right? In this, I usually do this when it comes to the emails that I write to you, right? I say, hey students, hope you're doing well. That is my greeting. And then I say, I just wanted to remind you that you are required to participate in the career readiness workshops, and this is a requirement as part of you completing your hours to receive your final stipend or something like that, right? And then I say
Yeah.
at the bottom, I say, hey, make sure to click this link and to follow the directions or instructions below to be able to join. See you next week or see you today. Right? So it's always the same formatting. And at the end, it is very important to have a formal closing salutation, right? So that is usually much appreciated, comma, or best, comma, or sincerely, comma, and then your name below, which is your signature, right? And if you check my emails, you always see that as well.
Yeah.
You have any questions in regards to the email etiquette?
Nope.
Do you feel confident that you think that you might be able to write a good email based on this right here?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. So now let's do an activity on it. And for this one, you can just type it in the chat. You can just type it in the chat and I can review it. Or if you have access to your email, if you can send me an email, that'll be okay. And so you can either choose one of the two scenarios listed below. So the first one is you're going to be late for a meeting with your supervisor and you need to reach out to them and ask them if they can possibly reschedule the meeting, right? And the second one is you woke up sick, very sick, and you need to inform your supervisor that you will not be attending work, right? So you can either do that in the chat or you can do that in an email and write it to me formally. So if you can do it right now, I'll appreciate it, and I'll give you a total of 5 minutes, and then you can decide which one you want to do and then type it in the chat. It doesn't have to be 3 paragraphs. It doesn't have to be a paragraph. It can be
Okay.
a couple of sentences, very concise, to the point, good grammar, and following what I sent you or what I show you in regards to the email etiquette. Make sense?
Yeah.
Do you want me to put the last slide?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
So are you gonna do it through email or text message? I mean, the chat.
I'll do it through email.
Okay, sounds good. So I'll give you, how long do you think you need?
5 minutes is fine.
Okay, so 5 minutes. So it's 5:16. So let's do it at 5:21. Let's return at that time. So I'm just gonna turn off my camera. I'm gonna mute myself. But if you have any questions, I'm still gonna be here. Okay?
Okay.
Okay, are you done?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, most likely I just got it. So let's share and then let's look at it and see how we can improve it, okay?
Okay.
Let's see my email. Okay, okay. I think it is great. I think there's a few things that I feel like we should tweak so it can be a little better. But I liked it. The first thing that I noticed was that you didn't use any capital in the subject. So I would say you capital. Um, attend capital, like the A, we usually use capital depending of the sentence. So
Mm,
I think that is important. I
okay.
really like the intro. Hey, Valorant, simple, concise. No need to say dear Valorant Fernandez. We don't do that. That is more old-fashioned, and it depends on the setting as well.
Yeah.
I get, I want to let you know that I woke up feeling unwell this morning and will be able to work today. I'll rest and keep you updated if anything. I would have said, I apologize for the inconvenience that this may have caused to you. But please let me know if anything urgent comes up. And you forgot to put the period at the end of comes up, right? But I think this is great. I think it has a lot of potential. It's a matter of like fixing those small little imperfections. So I
Yeah.
think this is great. I think this is great. So let us continue. Let's see. Oh, and let's see. I have two more slides and that's it. Okay, so my communication tips that you should always follow is respect others' perspective and opinions. The reality is that most of the time you're gonna work with people that you might not like, and they might not like you back either, or some people that you might have some disagreements with. But it is important that you always have to, keep a professional reputation and a professional impression, right? Meaning that the fact that others don't respect me, I cannot just yell at the people, right? Like some of the students, I think I'm very strict. I'm not gonna be yelling or cursing at my students because they don't respect me or because they have a different opinion of me, right?
Yeah.
Completely, that's completely inappropriate. I can deal with it in the best way possible and in the best professional way possible, right? Be mindful of different cultural differences when it comes to the communication. Use constructive feedback to promote growth. Very important. And that also shows that you take the initiative to, self-improve and that you have a lot of, self-awareness as well. And that is very important. Um, and the last one is adapt your communication style to different situations and audiences, right? So as mentioned earlier, if you're communicating to the masses, that's gonna be to the mass, that's gonna be a little different. When you're communicating on a one-on-one, when you're communicating to a group, that is different. Also depending on the communication policies of the organization, right?
Yeah.
Those are things to keep in mind. I don't know why he keeps sending me there. The pictures from that. Oh, makes sense. Makes sense. Okay. And the last one is about professional networking. What do you know about professional networking? Have you heard about that before?
I think I have.
What do you know?
Um, isn't it like maintaining like a professional relationship in like a professional place or something like that?
It doesn't have to be specifically to one place or the place that you work at. It's about, the process of building and maintaining professional relationships to exchange information, advice, and opportunities, right? So for this one specifically is let's say that you are in college and you want to be an attorney, so you have to apply to law school and you wanted to network, meeting, communicate, or get in contact with people that are currently in law school or experienced attorneys, right? And for you decide to go to the pre-law conference, right? And then you meet people, you make the contact, and you continue with that connection, right?
Yeah.
That is what it seems, or that is what is considered to be professional networking, because you're strategically putting yourself out there and connecting with these individuals that have a lot of experience that you know that might be beneficial to you. It is important to know that for networking, professional networking to be the most effective is that for those to be organic and what is it? Beneficial connection for both way, and that they're authentic as well, and genuine, meaning that you're not only friends with me because I have this contacts. No, I am friends with you because you have a great a great personality, great vibes, but then you also have a lot of experience that I would like to learn from you and help you with whatever.
Hmm.
Right? So it is good to keep in mind because it's not like you're going to a networking event or that you're meeting somebody and then you feel, the need to talk to them even though they're not good people and you don't like their personality because they have a lot of contacts, right? It depends. It depends of how do you see yourself in the next 5 years? How do you see yourself in the future? How do you want to continue that connection or that potential friendship, right? So it's a lot that goes into it. And the first thing to know is that you have to be extremely polite and respectful. You cannot be rude or, be openly in disagreement with something, obviously depending on the time and the place. Be attentive, listen more than you speak. Be confident, but be humble. There's a difference between sharing your achievements without boosting, right? That is very, very different. The fourth one is being prepared. Have your business cards, have a brief introduction ready, right? And I believe that I mentioned this last week actually. But in the next few years, we're gonna go over like the elevator speech and things like that. So it is how can you, introduce yourself in a few minutes that is concise and it is productive to the mission that you have, which is, getting more contacts or something like that. It's important to be punctual. Very important. If you have a meeting that starts at 9, don't arrive there at 9:45. It says bad things about you. 100%. It says bad things about your organizational skills. It says bad things about you as as an employee, as a professional. It shows that you're not interested, that you're not prepared, and things like that. And make sure that you always follow up with, a thank you email or a follow-up message or something like that. Okay. So pretty much I have like a hoop, but that is for like large groups. So I don't think that it's needed for us to do it. But that was it for me. I hope you have that this was a good class for you. Hope that you have a beautiful day, and then I'll see you next week.
Okay.
Take care. Do you have any questions before I leave?
No.
Okay, sounds good. Bye.